All right. Schaun, thanks for joining me. I know we wanted to talk about our little elevator pitch for AMP, or agentic decisioning, AI decisioning. And so would love to hear your pitch to someone if you're in an elevator with them on what we're doing here.
All right. 30 seconds, like an elevator pitch is hard. I think if I had to try to put it in 30 seconds, I'd probably say AMP segments content instead of segmenting users. And then it statistically maps that segmented content to user profiles in a way that allows you to take what you learn from one interaction and transfer it forward into all of the other interactions you have with the user. So no matter what you do at one time, that informs the things you do at the later time without some human having to like go in and say, oh, we're going to do this. Make it happen automatically. I'd say that's kind of the core of what AMP does. The way this is beyond an elevator pitch now, but the way I've started thinking about it, okay, I promise this is relevant. When my kids were little, my mom would send them packages for their birthday or holidays or just because, and we could never predict what was going to be in those packages. Like she'd put in stickers, she'd put in candy, she'd get some random thing off of Amazon, she'd put in a stuffed animal. There were times my kids were like, why did grandma send us this and why is it missing 5 pieces? And we'd look at it and it was like a toy I had when I was like 5 years old that she must have found in a box in some back room. Was like, yeah, I'll send that. And what was funny is not only could we not predict what was in the packages, we couldn't predict what our kids would like from the packages. Like sometimes it was like stickers, that's all I want, and they're gone. Like normally my kids are like candy fiends, and other times they were like, no, we don't care about that. There's even like they're teenagers now and they have a couple of my old toys from when I was a kid that came in these boxes that they decided they liked and they kept. And the interesting thing was the box itself was just the delivery mechanism. If one thing in that package worked, caught my kids' attention and they liked it, the package was successful, even if they didn't care about all the rest of it. You only needed one thing in the package or the package as a whole to work. What's interesting, it got me thinking about how people approach customer engagement now, because so much tooling is designed at designing the whole package. It's how are you going to put in what are you going to put in the subject line? What images are you putting? Where are you putting the images? How many paragraphs in the email? It's all of this like crafting of the entire package. And AMP agents fundamentally approach that differently because they recognize that you only need one thing in the package to work for the package to be successful. There is no like message A versus message B because the message is just the delivery mechanism. What you care about is a message contains a particular product category. It's shoes or shirts, or it's a bike versus a rowing machine, or it's comedy versus documentary. There's different reasons why people engage in those things. If you're an exercise app, like why do they exercise? Not why do they exercise with your app? That's actually a separate thing that you should include, but just why do they exercise in general? What incentives are you offering? What's your tone of voice? There's all these different things that are kind of like the manifest of the package contents. And that's all the agents really care about. That's not strictly true. There's a little bit they care about the human facing stuff, but they mostly care about what are the labels that you've put on there that tell you the different kinds of things in the package. And that's what they're learning. All they're really doing is you're delivering the package. You see what that people either liked the package or didn't. And then the agents are just inferring from that, what were the contents? And then how can I roll up that information so I can then, next time I send a package, be more likely to pick the stuff that has been in successful packages in the past. That's at its core, that's all AMP is doing. The agents, there's lots of math involved in how they make all their judgments about what matters. And there's what they do when they don't have a lot of dense information for an individual. How do they fall back to the wisdom of the crowd? Like there's all this kind of stuff that is important for how it functions, but at its very core, it's really just doing what my mom was doing when she sent my kids these packages. It was put some stuff in, and as long as I get one win, that's a win. Package successful. It gets me what I was hoping to get. And that's an attitude that seems almost completely absent from traditional tooling. Traditional tooling focuses you into making all these micromanaging decisions about crafting the whole package, where it's like you're worrying about what the address looks like on the label instead of what's actually inside the thing. That doesn't make any sense.
Thank you for the non 30-second version of that, because I think it's a great metaphor. But would you say that maybe the traditional way is because the incentives they needed some sort of metric to kind of suggest that this is a win. And at least the agentic decisioning way just makes it, the attribution is harder to claim, that that's our win. And that's why CTR is such an easy metric to be like, yes, I clicked on it, therefore it must be effective, right? Versus
Good. I
like,
mean,
was it a
yes,
time of day?
I think there is some truth to that in that, like, it's not that agentic attribution is harder. It's that agentic attribution is more honest. The traditional attribution, the click stuff, it's garbage. In fact, we just finished helping an analysis with TaxFix where they were trying to understand differences in results that they were seeing. And we pointed out that in one case, I think this had to do with, maybe it was retention. I don't remember which, but the difference was between those that had interacted enough that the agents had been able to personalize versus those who hadn't. And they came back and they said, no, the click rate is the same across both. And we were like, yes, you're right. Because clicking has nothing to do with time spent in app. Those are two separate things. There are some platforms where those might be tightly correlated, but that's an analytical question. You need to actually measure it and see. And in almost all of the cases we've looked at, the clicky users are not the users who are purchasing. It's two different groups of users.
So would you say like now that like, I mean, that's a great segue actually into the next set of stories of like, the old way and how the old model of customer engagement is breaking, because obviously with the one-to-one agent relationship, there's a lot more literal personalization because it's human level, it's user level that you can do. And so that's one misconception, right? Of like, the click is what matters and therefore that's what we're going to base it on. But what would you say are the other misconceptions? What are the biggest misconceptions of, brands or maybe even the industry about what AI-driven personalization or what AI can do in customer engagement space?
I'd probably fit that into two different buckets. So there's what I think is a fundamental misconception about what machine assisted customer engagement even does. And then there's the more granular, like there's lots of different methods that are called AI decisioning. And how does an agentic approach differ from those? And I think they're both worth addressing. The basic misconception I find is that, so if you're going to create something for humans to do, because everything humans does is complicated. That's not humans' fault. That's just it's a complicated world. You have to abstract out certain parts of the problem. You have to say, this is the part I'm going to have you focus on, human, because humans have limited attention spans, limited capacity. We run out of steam. Well, we can only do so much. So you either have to abstract it out by automating it, by having a machine that can do part of it without the human having to worry about it, or else you have to abstract it out by saying, we're just going to make some simplifying assumptions and you're going to ignore that part and we're going to hope it's okay. And the way most customer engagement approaches now, even the AI-driven ones, work is through the simplifying assumptions. So they basically say, we're going to model this entire thing as you have data sources and you have channels, delivery mechanisms, and you're going to orchestrate. You're going to map, here's this data, and it tells me this is who should get this message through this delivery mechanism. And that's why you have these segments. That's why you have journeys, things like that, because it's a simple mapping. Someone can go in and say, I want these people to receive this message, and it's based on this data that my data science team or my analytics team came up with, and you'll deliver it for me. Okay, great. It does take away some of the work. Like you don't have to like text them individually. But the simplifying assumption that gets enforced in those cases has to do with human preferences. It flattens the entire thing into just what the business wants. Because the business has priorities and constraints, things that they have to do to make money, to stay in business. Like that has to happen. You don't deliver value to anyone if you don't stay in business. And they assume away all of the facts that the end users have those same things. End users have priorities. End users have habits. End users have constraints. But you don't think about any of that. You say, well, my data says that these people are statistically more likely if we send something to 50,000 of them, we're going to get a higher return rate than if we don't send to that 50,000. Therefore, we send it to them. You're ignoring everything about their preferences and you're only focusing on the business's preferences. And that can be a tactical win. It's always a strategic failure. It teaches your users that you never listen to them, that you don't care what they want, and that you really are they are cogs, they are lines on a spreadsheet that you're trying to maximize. And they don't think about it. Users don't think about it in that way necessarily. They get the vibe of it. They're like, oh my gosh, you keep droning on. This is all boilerplate. You just messaged me about this, and I even dismissed it. Like they get just this feel that it's a bad experience. But what they're really feeling is that the company is consistently prioritizing what it wants over what they want. It's the opposite of customer service. And if you look at the tools that get lumped into AI decisioning, they all do this pretty explicitly. Like people, I hate it when people call A/B testing the gold standard. A/B testing was the gold standard 100 years ago, maybe 20 years ago too, maybe. But even then, it was moving out. A/B testing does one good thing, and it makes your decisions based on actual data. So you run message A, message B, message A performs twice as well. Message A actually performed twice as well. You have evidence. That's good. But an A/B test, if message A performs twice as well as message B, everyone from then on gets message A, even the people who actually responded to message B. Like the ones who demonstrated they liked it still get message A because message A won. And that will never change until you run a different test to see if you can change it. Like that's like deciding where you're going to invest your money for your retirement, and you research a bunch of companies and you're like, this company is performing better. I'm putting all of my money into that company and I will never take it out and I'm never going to look at it. I'm just going to assume it's going to be fine. Like in any other domain, we're like, that's a stupid idea. But when it comes to customer engagement, we're like, oh, well, the A/B test came out with A better than B, so let's go with that. And bandits were created to deal with that problem. A bandit is just saying, instead of running the A/B test and stopping and saying, okay, this is significant, therefore we go with that, you keep running it. You're basically compiling the results every day or whatever cadence you want and adjusting how you feel about the winning or losing of different options based on what your current state. And you hedge your bets. So if A performs twice as well as B, your people are twice as likely to get A. They aren't all getting A. They're just twice as likely. And that still has the same problem as A/B testing, in that even the people who liked B are still statistically more likely to get A. You're not recognizing that they liked B better. And if you want that kind of personalization, you have to get into a statistical model. That's predictive analytics, predictive modeling. That's also part of what people tend to, like all of the different AI decisioning suites out there include that kind of stuff. But predictive models are only as good as the data you feed into them. So like we had this case with some of our customers where like our agents started messaging people at 11:30 at night and they were freaking out because why would we do that? And it turns out that there were people who were working weird shifts. And there's actually a good idea. It was a minority, it was a niche preference, but it was a definite preference. But there's no way that nothing in their data ever would have told them to do that. There's no model that could have told them to do that because they hadn't tried it. They hadn't actually done what an A/B test does, which is generate the data it needs. And you get the same problem with your model's only as good as the features are able to predict it. And a lot of times you don't have features that predict an outcome that you want. You only have the features you happen to have. And so models often will create this false sense of security that it's like, well, it gave me a prediction, but the prediction could be crap. But it does give you that kind of personalization, which is why people created these contextual bandits that basically marry up a bandit and a predictive model. So you get the adaptiveness, you get the hedging, you still don't get the issue of individual preferences as much unless you have a model that actually predicts those preferences. And you have those features that do that, which usually you don't. And often people who run contextual models don't even test that to see if that happens. So you have all this tooling out there that over and over again is just prioritizing. I'm trying to maximize this outcome. What gives me the closest thing I can get to maximizing that outcome? Like it doesn't consider the fact that you have this mountain of data for individual preferences that are not getting used. Those are lines in a training set that may or may not come out to individual preferences because you don't have features that you can't model every individual individually in a traditional statistical model. It's not what it's designed to do. Creates too big of a feature set. A model will choke on that. And so all our agents are doing are they're taking the contextual bandit model, like the thing that is actually a useful thing, but does have some downsides. And instead of stopping there, they're taking that as the baseline. They're saying, if I don't know anything else about a user, yeah, I'm going to use the contextual bandit because it's a good idea. But if I've interacted with this user and they've shown me preferences, that should override what the bandit says. And if they only interacted once and they've given me like this tiny preference and that's all I have, I should mostly count what the bandit's doing and maybe adjust it a little bit. If they've given me a lot of information, I should ignore the bandit entirely. And if it's somewhere in between, the average should be somewhere in between. In the literature, this is what they call a hierarchical adaptive contextual bandit, which as far as I've seen is only exists in the literature and in AMP. There's probably a few other like larger
Yeah.
companies, but no one's ever designed it as something that you can offer to other people. Um, because it takes these two, it's hierarchical. It takes two levels. You have the bandit level and you have the individual level, and you're combining them. That's something that I just haven't seen in other offerings. It's always, oh, look, we have a bandit, and you assume that it's going to personalize. What I find really interesting is if we go back to what I was talking about with my mom and sending stuff to the kids, if you treat messages as the thing that you're testing, no matter what model or what technology you have backing it, you can't personalize. Like if you look at any of the bandit offerings out there in the market, the ones that everyone talks about, you're testing 5, 10, maybe at most 20 different messages. Like imagine going to a restaurant where their claim, like right on the outside of the restaurant, they're like, we will fully personalize your meal. And what that means is you get to choose one of the 10 things on the menu. It's ridiculous to call that personalization. There's nothing about that's personalization. That's just regular like table stakes. Whereas if you really want personalization, you have to break out your content into its pieces. You have to know all of those different value propositions and motivations and tones of voice, everything like that. And then you assemble your delivery, your package, your meal from those things. If you don't have both those parts, both the hierarchical learning on the back to be able to, yes, learn the contextual bandit, but also layer in individual preferences, and then also have content segmented out so you're able to really get at granular differences in content instead of, oh, I populated 10 messages and that's going to work for my like 20,000 monthly users. It's funny when you put it into words, it's kind of silly. You're like, you have 800,000 monthly users, and for any given campaign, you have at most 10 options. And you're like, yeah, we personalize. I'm like it's not personalization.
I think what's really resonating here is that a lot of the tooling out there is really just making the act of messaging easier to manage and not necessarily getting it closer to what the user actually wants. And I mean, we've seen the evolution of, customer engagement from broadcast to, as the tools evolve, segmentation became the thing because now you can segment. But we're now at that point wherein segmentation is not enough. And even layered with A/B tests and all that, it still isn't here. So it's super fascinating to hear how you're building on bandits and, the higher learning above that because of the one-to-one agent relationship. So if this is the table stakes now, what would you say are the three biggest areas do you think companies will suffer if they don't invest or if they don't get in on this now? Because to your point, A/B tests are better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a if not now, when, right? So what would be what are they missing out on now if they don't invest or start to invest in systems like AMP or in AMP generally?
I would say first cost is their users will walk. Like again, users aren't thinking of this in terms of, oh, you're prioritizing your business priorities over my priorities. Like no one thinks in those terms except people who build systems like this, but they feel it. They talk about it in terms of boilerplate content or tone deaf or just annoying. But the thing is, like, no matter what you offer, there are at least 5, probably upwards of 50 other companies that are offering the same thing. And onboarding has become so cheap, and that means offboarding is cheap. Like it's really, really easy for people to switch preferences. And so the more you basically throw your users under the bus chasing short-term optimization, the more your users decide to go find some other place to be. So I'd say that's one. I'd say 2 is burnout among employees. This like A/B testing, every single time you find some shop that does a lot of A/B testing, unless they are like Google or Facebook, although even Google and Facebook have moved on to other things in a lot of cases, you find they're throwing huge amounts of resources at this. Like the A/B testing is so labor intensive. You have to traffic cop it because otherwise you run several teams run several A/B tests and they end up contaminating each other's pools. Like the A/B testing is based on some pretty strict assumptions, and that's difficult for a business to uphold those assumptions. You know what? I know what the third one is: missed opportunities. Everyone only, there's no company that's like, yes, we've invested everything we want to and everything we want. We have no other needs. Like whether you're an individual employee or a company, there's always more that you want to do than you have the capacity to do. That's just the nature of living. And the more you have to you have to make trade-offs. If you're going to decide, no, we're going to do all of this bespoke segmentation and A/B testing and use all of these older tools because for whatever reason we're more familiar with them, we understand them better, we are more comfortable with them. What you are doing is taking a list of 10 to 100 things and saying we will not invest in those. We're not even going to try because you're spending all of your it's like every company has 3 to 5 innovation coins and you get to spend those however you want. And if you're going to decide we want to construct our own database instead of using a database structure that is already on the market, you're spending at least one of those innovation coins. You're probably spending 2 or 3. That's a choice where you're because everyone wants a database, their technical system, to do exactly what they want. But almost everyone decides, you know what, I can work some workarounds, I can make do with what it is, because building it to exactly suit me isn't worth the amount of effort and resources it would take to do it. And I think a lot of times because, especially CRM, but also product, has run in this way for so long that people don't realize they're making a choice. They're deciding to invest obscene amounts of effort and time and money into a system that will only get greedier. It's only going to ask for more. And if an agentic system, a true agentic system, not just like a wrapper around an LLM or A/B testing and bandits renamed to AI decisioning, but an actual hierarchical individualized system allows you to take a whole bunch of that work and say, I don't need to do that anymore. You now manage that work. You monitor what's happening, you give guardrails, you give feedback to it in order to keep it going in the direction you want. But a huge amount of that work is just not something you have to do anymore, which means you now have the ability to work on other things. I'm old enough to remember when IBM's Deep Blue beat Kasparov at chess. And I remember when Kasparov stood up, walked off the set, and the whole audience was people were like, oh my gosh, the machines are coming for us now. Which is funny that happened so long before LLMs came out. But what's interesting is Kasparov didn't stop playing chess. He noticed that computers are really good at tactical work. Like if you lay out a chessboard and say, this is the situation of the chessboard, I have to make one move right now. What's my best move? A computer can go through every single possible move on that board and every single response, and probably even the next step after that, and pick one that's going to put you probabilistically in the best position. Humans have a hard time doing that. In fact, chess grandmasters consistently say that what makes you a grandmaster is the ability to do that, to memorize positions and plays. But he was like, computer could do better than me now. And so he created this thing called advanced chess, where each player was actually a team of a human and a computer. And the computer took care of tactics. It was like, here's where you are, here's the move and your 3 top moves. And then the human took care of strategy. Like, do I value my rooks more than my knights? Do I try to get this pawn turned into a queen? Like all these different things of what the trade-offs you're willing to make and what you're going to prioritize. And when he played that, he played against a guy who he had played I think 4 times before, and he had trounced the guy 4 times in a row. It wasn't even close. He had beat him very, very soundly. And he played him 3 or 4 more times in this chess tournament, advanced chess tournament, and he never got more than a draw. Because Kasparov was way better than this guy at tactics, but they were equally matched on strategy, and the computer leveled that out. He no longer had to worry about the tactics. He had something that could do that. It didn't mean he didn't have anything else to do. He actually had this entire area of investment and return on investment that he could pursue now, that before he couldn't do that, because if he tried to do that at the expense of tactics, other people would have beaten him. We have all these companies that are investing in these tactical, what do I put in this subject line? Let's have a meeting and decide what email we should send out. Like it's this ridiculous amount of investment, and it's all tactical, and they're not realizing that they're throwing their strategies out the window because they don't have time for it. All they can do is invest in tactical. An agentic system moves those priorities. The agents take on the tactical work and it frees up your humans to do the stuff that a computer can't do.
Sean, I think that's a great place to end this and maybe like even tease to the next conversations we're having on those trade-offs, right? I think a lot to be learned, and I think this is a good start to the conversation. But yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime.